Yo guys, what is up? I hope you're all doing great. Welcome to another episode of my interview show where I interview awesome YouTubers and like awesome people in general. Today we're gonna talk to Kaisa, who's a Finnish YouTuber based in Beijing, China. And she recently had a very interesting experience of, well, being stuck in Finland and then making her way back home to Beijing.
We are at the Helsinki-Vantaa airport and it's super empty.
She traveled from Helsinki to Beijing during the pandemic and she was put in quarantine in a hotel in China where she had to stay for 2 weeks.
Now I'm here alone in my room.
The only problem was that it was quite dirty, like seriously dirty.
Okay, that's a big problem.
And today I'm gonna ask her about her experience. What was it like being stuck in a hotel room in China for 2 weeks?
We had our luggage and we were leaving, so they took us to the quarantine hotel. You couldn't escape anywhere. So in that sense it was, like not voluntary.
Was she ever allowed to go outside? What was the hotel like? Was she able to choose it by herself? Did she have to pay for it by herself? And beside that, we're also gonna talk a little bit about her life in Beijing and her life back in Japan, because she used to live in Japan.
So you met your husband on Tinder in China.
Yeah.
So it is possible to find love on Tinder, basically.
It is.
So yeah, keep watching if you want to find out what it's like being stuck in quarantine in China.
I saw your video about your experience traveling to China and being stuck in quarantine in China in a hotel for 2 weeks, which is a very good video, by the way. I'm going to link it down below for all of
Thanks.
you guys that want to see it and want to hear you explain what your experience was like. But before we jumped into it and I asked you a couple of questions about quarantine, I just want to ask, how the heck did you learn to speak 6 languages? I watched your video about you speaking 6 languages and it's so good because you actually speak those languages. You know those people who make those videos and they're like, I speak the language, I count to 5. And I'm like, mate.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say I speak like fluently all 6 languages, but thank you.
You're pretty good at it.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here. It feels really cool to be featured in your videos because I've been watching your videos since you were YouTubing like in Shanghai, so quite a long time. So I really love watching your videos, and also this new series. I really like that you introduce YouTubers. Yeah, about the languages. I was born and raised in Finland. So my parents are Finnish. That's how I learned Finnish at home. I didn't live abroad like you have lived when you were a kid. So actually I just spent my whole youth in Finland. I learned German, English, and Swedish at school. The first time I was actually living abroad was when I was 23 years old and I was living in Japan. I mean, I had first learned a little bit of basic Japanese back in Finland at university. And then I moved to Japan because I just found it really fascinating country. And I did one exchange semester in Niigata, which is like in the middle of nowhere. It's countryside. And then I wanted to still spend some more time. So I applied for an internship in Tokyo. And after that, I just realized that, living abroad is like the coolest thing that has ever happened to me.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. So I really wanted to do it again. So I felt that, I might as well learn another language. So I started learning Chinese and I learned for 1 year and then I went for exchange. And this time I was staying for 1 year.
Where did you go?
Studying.
China.
I went to Beijing. So I did 2 universities. First, I went to Beijing 外国语大学, like the foreign studies university. And then I went to Renmin 大学, which is like Renmin University of China. And in the foreign studies university, I was only studying Chinese, and in Renmin, I was studying also law in addition to Chinese language. But maybe I became fluent like during the past year or so when I met my husband. So we speak Chinese at home.
So you basically just married, or you married last year, right?
Yeah, at the end of last year. Yeah.
So maybe we're going to get into that a bit later. But now let me ask you about your experience traveling to China during this time. So basically you're based in Beijing, you live and work in Beijing, and you were in Finland when this whole pandemic happened, right?
Actually, I was in China in January and February. So I was spending the Chinese New Year still in Zhejiang, which turned out to be one of the most severe areas in China where the sort of epidemic had started, like nearby Hubei province. And then we came back to Beijing and we stayed here about 1 month. And then at the end of February, we went to Finland. And our intention was to stay 2 weeks there.
And then how long did you end up staying?
2 months.
Okay, that's the same as me. I went from Bali to Copenhagen and I was like, maybe I'm going to stay for a week. Then I was like, maybe 2 weeks.
Right.
Now it's been over 2 months. And I'm like,
oh, you're still in Copenhagen?
Yeah, still here.
Okay, right.
No flights to Poland. So I think, I mean, there has been like no flights for the past 3 months. So you stayed in Finland for 2 months. You were basically kind of stuck there. And then you decided that you have to go back home to Beijing. Was it difficult to get the tickets from Beijing, from Finland to China?
Yeah, so actually what happened that we were staying like two weeks in Finland and our return ticket got like first postponed and then just canceled. And all the time we were trying to like buy new tickets after the cancellation. So I think we bought at least 10 tickets before we finally could board the plane. So all the time there were, it seemed like there are flights between Europe and China from different cities, but for some reason I guess they just handpick people who can get in and who can get out, or some airline companies, I think they were selling tickets for flights that never took off, so that was also a little bit disappointing.
They do that, and I was stuck in Indonesia. Basically, they told me that they canceled my flight, but no, they canceled my ticket. The flight still took off.
Right.
And then when I was asking them to put me on another flight, they were like, we can put you there, but we cannot guarantee you that you will actually get on that flight, because we already have 60 people on that flight who don't know yet that they're not getting on that flight. 60. And it was still like 12 hours until the flight, Imagine the amount of people who are getting stuck in Bali. How was your experience at the airport? Was it like weird? Was it like I could imagine that everything was shut down, right? Were there any like extra security measures or?
Right. So first in Finland, like the airport train didn't stop at the airport, so we had to take a taxi to the airport. No, I think actually my sister took us there. Anyways, you couldn't take like public transportation to the airport, so it's basically closed completely. There were like no people at the airport. There was one flight, I think, from Qatar Airways that was still flying, because that desk was like next to Junior Airlines we took. So there were some people there. After the security check, they had passport control that they normally wouldn't have, because Finland is part of Schengen area. And at the airport, the only people were actually at our gate. So that's where the crowds were. So there were quite a lot of people taking that flight on that day. There were only 2 first rows that didn't have people, but the rest of them were like every seat was full.
Okay, that's interesting, because I also heard people saying that maybe when in the future, when we will be flying, it's going to be like every other row or whatever, distance.
Yeah, and I've seen pictures also, like, or some friends told me who have come back, like during the pandemic, like how the planes were half empty or even less. But our flight was almost full.
Yeah.
So,
but to be honest, that really doesn't surprise me, because I think a lot of the things we hear are just not necessarily true, and it's like sort of a bullshit.
Yeah, and like some flights are just more full. Like I have one friend who flew to Iran, and it was seriously like almost empty. But this flight to China was just almost full. It's also probably based on demand, that there are actually people who want to go back to China, and everybody was like wearing that protective gear from head till toes. Like we had only the masks and then gloves in our hands, but I don't know where they got them, because it was really hard to even get the masks anywhere because they were sold out everywhere.
So how did it feel being in the plane? Like, did you feel uncomfortable? Because the first time I took a train here in Denmark, after not taking train for like 2 months, I was like, whoa, cannot touch anything.
Yeah, maybe at first it felt a little bit freaky, because everybody looked like they came from Mars or something, because they were like wearing those clothes. But, when the plane took off, I felt like so happy. Like it felt so good to be back traveling and so good to be back on my way back home.
Yeah, I can imagine. I
Yeah.
mean, I can totally imagine how it's like being stuck. And then you landed in China, and basically whoever lands in China, whoever comes to China now is forced to be in quarantine. It's forced, maybe forced is a wrong word, but you have to be in quarantine.
No, it's the right word. Yeah.
Okay, you're forced. No, you're okay.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's good. Like people should be forced to be in quarantine, right?
Yeah, it's not voluntary. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're put into quarantine, and you have to basically sit in a hotel room for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Right.
cannot go home and do it at your own place.
No, not at all. So like when we landed, we actually landed in Shanghai because we just couldn't get flights back to Beijing. So we flew to Shanghai, and in Shanghai airport, they first took, you're home. Like they first took the tests if we had the disease. And after the tests, we had to fill in quite many papers and also download a couple of health applications that they use in China. And after that, they had like the normal entry, security and passport and so on. Once, we had our luggage and we were leaving, so they took us to the quarantined hotel. So like you couldn't escape anywhere. So in that sense, it was, not voluntary.
Do you choose the hotel yourself?
No, they appointed us. So they didn't give like a list of hotels.
Do you want Shangri-La,
Where would you like
or are you more into Marriott? From your video, I could see that the hotel you were staying in looked quite good, right?
Yeah, well, in a sense, I mean, I think it has been good hotel. Like maybe 10 years ago, it was slightly bit worn down, and that didn't really matter. The only problem was that it was quite dirty, like seriously dirty.
Okay, that's a big problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't complain about the standard as in like how the room was built and what you have a nice big bed there and, like even a bathtub. But, they have a full carpet on the floor, like covering the whole floor, and they didn't allow vacuum cleaning. I think it was the local epidemic prevention center that had forbidden to use vacuum cleaning, also air conditioning. So the carpet was like full of dust ever since February, I guess. And it was dirty.
But I think
that was pretty gross.
I heard a lot that at least air conditioning, so maybe it's the same with vacuum cleaners, that they just contain a lot of bacteria. That maybe that's like but still,
I have a feeling like if you want to keep people healthy, it would be healthier to stay in clean rooms than stay in dirty rooms. Like we had in our room, we had like the eggshells and toothpicks from the previous people who were living there.
Oh, okay, that's gross.
I don't think that's very healthy.
No, definitely not. Do you know any other people that were put in quarantine in China? Or have you heard if it's like usually the case, or you were unlucky?
Well, I've heard quite many people. For some reason, the carpet seems to be a problem. I mean, like normally in Chinese homes, you don't have a carpet, but they tend to have them in hotels here, and they have had the same prevention things elsewhere as well. Like vacuuming has not been allowed unless you really ask for it. After 1 week, we got the vacuum cleaner, and also the air conditioner was the same. I'm not sure if they changed the local rules while we were quarantined, but after 1 week they allowed the air conditioning. And you
basically so you were in that little hotel room or hotel room for 2 weeks nonstop. You cannot go out on the roof or whatever.
No, you can't even. You can open the door because they deliver food 3 times a day, and they put it in front of your door. And that's about it. I was, at some point I felt like I want to keep the door open because the corridor had a lot cooler air, but there was the camera right in front of my room, and I was like, how long can I keep the door open before somebody comes and shuts it? But you can't leave the room. Yeah.
Wow. What was it like for you? Was it difficult? I mean, I'm sure it was, but how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I think it was pretty difficult. The first day was the most difficult part, probably, that you can't walk anywhere, especially during the pandemic time in Finland. I was, used to walking a lot because there was nothing else to do. So I had been doing a lot of long walks, and suddenly you're put in into one room for 2 weeks. That was like the first uncomfortable feeling. But yeah, we did some sports like every day, tried to keep some workout routines to, feel a little bit more positive and kind of more normal.
And with food, you said that you got food delivered 3 times a day. I seen in your video that like you had this menu and you could choose your own food, or
no, you couldn't choose. They have like on the menu like dates when they're gonna provide those foods, and you can't choose it, so they will just automatically provide it to you. One day prior, you could say that I don't want the food at all from the list. Like you couldn't choose that, yes, I want breakfast and dinner, but I don't like the lunch. So you could say either you don't want the whole day food or you take everything. It was okay food considering the price, I think.
You do pay for the food and for the hotel yourself, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that it was expensive?
Well, first of all, like if you're a Chinese citizen living in that city you're landing, you're allowed to, I'm not sure if you're allowed to, but in some cases you're allowed to go home to do the quarantine. But there are the centralized quarantine hotels for the rest of us. And considering if you go back home where you have your everything you need at home and then you could order whatever you like, then of course that's a lot cheaper option. Quarantine hotels themselves, that was not a market price. The hotel would have been definitely more expensive if it was a normal market, if you would go and book it for yourself.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was like affordable price. But you can't choose whether you pay for it or not. You're stuck there for 2 weeks and you have to pay for it.
So you couldn't order any food from outside?
You could. I mean, like in our hotel it was allowed, but I've heard from some other foreigners who have arrived in China that they were not allowed. So I think we were lucky that they allowed us to order home delivery. So at least we ordered a lot of like sparkling water. And like one day I think we ordered McDonald's as well.
Yeah, I saw that in your video. How excited you were. Were you also able to order like books or, I don't know, just some delivery?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like any kind of home delivery was allowed.
Okay. So now you're done with quarantine. You're back home in Beijing.
Yeah.
I can imagine It must feel really good to be back in Beijing.
Definitely, like freedom feels really nice after the 2 weeks of quarantine and also 2 weeks in Finland. Because in Finland, we don't also have our home. So we were staying in like apartment hotel. So it's really nice to be back at home.
What is life like in Beijing right now? Do you still wear masks outside? Are you able to like go to restaurants, shops, or what is it like?
Yeah. So I think it was at first a little bit shocked that how normal things were, in the sense that there was lots of traffic. Like the traffic looked like normal levels of traffic, like really traffic jammed. People are out on the streets like back in the days, but they're all wearing masks. I'm not sure if it's compulsory in every case nowadays. Maybe if you do like some physical training outside, you're maybe allowed to be without a mask, but otherwise I think it's at least recommended because everybody wears it. The shops are mostly they are all open.
So you've been living in Beijing for over a year now, right?
Yeah.
How do you like Beijing?
Oh, I love Beijing.
You love Beijing?
Yeah, I do. I keep on coming back here. Like I studied here first, or the first time I came here as a tourist, like, I don't know, 2012 or something. Then I came here as a student. Then I came here to work in the internship, and now I'm working here. And it's just like among the Chinese cities, like this definitely feels my home. Like you, I think you understand since you like Shanghai quite a lot. So I have the same type of, feelings attached to Beijing.
Yeah, I mean, it's always like either people, have those feelings about Shanghai or Beijing.
Yeah.
But
it's either or.
Yeah, I know, right? I always liked Beijing, but I don't really, I don't know Beijing well. So I always felt like, oh, Shanghai is just the shit. But now after, also after talking to Nico and watching her videos in Beijing, I'm kind of feeling like more, next time I go to China, I definitely want to explore Beijing more.
Yeah. Beijing is a cool city. It has so many different sides to it.
Have you ever heard any funny or weird misconceptions about Beijing? Because when you were saying that you love Beijing, I just thought about something. So once I heard, and it was just this stupid, I think it was like a meme that online or whatever, saying that in Beijing, you never see the sun. So they put a screen, like a huge screen on the street, just showing the sunrise or something. So people can see the sun. And I'm like, yeah, sometimes it is polluted, but it's not like in Beijing, you never see the sun. But, people see shit
Right.
like that and they believe in it.
Yeah, well, I have to say that the pollution levels in Beijing have got better dramatically. Like in 2015, when I was doing the internship, it was really bad year. And that time you really didn't see sunrise, I'd say. It was like 500, more than 500 like weeks in a row. So it was really bad situation then. But now I'd say it's like an exception if it's a polluted day, like seriously polluted. Like in this 1.5 years I've been living here now, I don't think there has been a single day passing the 500, and 500 is like seriously really bad, but not even like passing 300. That's pretty like rare nowadays. So it's mainly blue skies nowadays. That's one misconception, is definitely. Another that I just came up with was like if you start studying Chinese, there's usually a chapter about Beijing and Beijing landscape, and it doesn't tell that it's actually a historical description of Beijing. And usually they always tell like, oh, Beijing has these massive armies of people like riding bikes, like old bikes. That kind of became a misconception. Like people drive cars nowadays a lot, like brand new cars, because they have like this whole, I don't know, it's a status thing in China. On one hand, like you want to have a big car, although, I don't know, in Finland, maybe with that salary level, you wouldn't buy such a big car, but here they really appreciate a cool car. And another thing is like they really promote the electric cars here. So there are like quite a lot of those modern electric cars here.
If you'd have to live in any other Chinese city and not Beijing, what would you choose?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I do like Shanghai. It's nice, but I feel like it's not my type of city. I did like Shenzhen quite a lot. I visited that a couple of times last year, but I visited Chengdu. Like, I don't know if Chengdu is still the same, but like in 2014, maybe I visited Chengdu and I really liked it. Like, it's such a beautiful city and I love Sichuan food. So maybe Chengdu would be my choice.
You had like the interesting experience of living in both Japan and China. What would you say that you sort of like about China that you don't have in Japan? And what do you like about Japan that you miss in China?
This is always a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Because those two countries are very different in almost every aspect. I'd say I think I like about China that it's so like dynamic. Everything happens so fast paced that it's just insane. It's just something that you feel like you're alive when you're here. In Japan, things happen a little bit slower, I'd say. Then life here is very convenient. Like you have, everything is mobile. Like you have mobile payments everywhere, use all kinds of applications to, those city bikes or whatever, taxis or home delivery. That's so convenient. It's also in Japan quite convenient, but they still don't they still use fax machines, for instance. So it's not as modern in that sense.
Yeah, I've heard that. It's very weird.
It is, and especially because Japan has this like reputation of being like this high technology country, and there are still some really ancient things happening there. And things that I like about Japan, I say, these both countries have like really long history, but like Japan has really preserved it well. Like they have so beautiful old ancient buildings that China has almost abolished. And in a sense, it's just really beautiful country, like very harmonious, and like people pay attention to details. So like you have so smooth living there. No one disturbs you ever, and everybody's really polite. Whereas in China, it feels like it's a struggle every day. Although it's very convenient, but there's always somebody like just screaming at you or like riding a scooter over you, or it's
pushing
just
you.
Yeah. So it's a bit more a struggle here.
When I first moved to China, like one of my first Chinese lessons, I asked my teacher how to say, "Excuse me, can you move?" or something, or just "Excuse me," I think, because whenever I was taking metro or whatever, there would be so many people. So I wanted to be like, "Okay, excuse me, can I, like walk through?" And my teacher was like, it's better if you just don't say anything, just push.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's the Chinese style. Yeah. Whereas in Japan, you have 10 different words for excuse me or sorry or I'm so sorry to disturb you. Yeah. There's like a different word. Like if you enter a room or like there is a specific word for that, like "shitsureimasu," and you're like, I'm coming into the room, or you're leaving the subway. Sorry, I'm coming through.
So you said that you got married last year. Well, congrats again. And you have a very interesting story. You made a video about it. So everyone, if you're interested about how to find a Chinese or how you can find a Chinese husband, check it out.
Yeah.
So you met your husband.
That sounds a bit strange.
Yeah, that sounded a little wrong. Okay. I take it back. So you met your husband on Tinder in China.
Yeah.
So it is possible to find love on Tinder, basically.
It is. Yeah, I'd say it's not the most traditional way to, find a partner in China. Like Tinder is not widely used here, but they have their own version, like 1010 or something, I guess. But yeah, it's possible. And it would have not been possible without Tinder. Yeah, I wish Tinder was sponsoring me someday.
Yeah. So if anyone wants to, hear your story, you should check out your video. You have a whole video with your husband where you guys are, telling the story about how you met. It's a very cool video.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much for talking to me. It was really nice to meet you.
Thank you, Kaja. It was really nice to be on your channel and chatting with you.
I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to subscribe to my channel and remember to subscribe to Kaisa's channel, and let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this type of video, if you want me to make more, and if you have any recommendations to who I should talk to next. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll hopefully see you soon.